As the film clicked through the camera, I could see the objects moving southeast behind the General Mills grain building and the black water tank directly south of the ballpark. I filmed the objects until they disappeared into the blue sky behind the water tank.
There's only a few feet of film. It'll be over practically before your eyes are focused on it. Now remember, there's only a few feet of film, so watch closely.
I still had my doubts, but I must admit I felt an excitement about seeing actual motion pictures of unidentified flying objects for the first time.
Ready?
Ready.
What do you make of it?
You saw what I saw.
What's your opinion?
I'll run it again.
Do you have a transcript on Mariana?
It's at Dayton.
Good. Colonel Searles wants me to go to Dayton. That is, if you'll give me clearance.
I'll have you cleared. It's a good idea for you to get acquainted with the history of UFOs. When you get to Dayton, you'll meet Captain Ruppelt. The three of us are going to be working closely from here on. Ruppelt will give you a complete briefing on Blue Book.
What's the story on him?
Ruppelt's an aeronautical engineer. He knows about things that fly. An excellent man to head up Project Blue Book.
Okay. Once again, what's your opinion of this film?
As far as I'm concerned, I'll have to classify them as unknowns. I'll run the film again, this time in slow motion.
This time I strained my eyes to study the film. The Air Force analysts, by measuring the angular velocity of the objects and by computing their speed, had determined that they were not balloons.
Well?
There was something up there in that sky. And if they were not balloons, I don't know what to think.
You better get going to Dayton.
Yes, sir. May I help you?
I'll chop to see Captain Ruppelt.
Captain's right over there, sir.
Thanks. Captain Ruppelt, I'm Al Chop.
Have a seat, sir. Major Fernet lured me you're arriving. You've got the green light here. Where would you like to start?
As a springboard, I suggested that he brief me on the general outline of how the organization handled reports on UFOs. Ruppelt began to fill me in on the baffling saucer problem, including a breakdown on the reported sightings supplemented by graphs. There were literally hundreds of cases where Air Defense Command pilots had attempted to intercept UFOs. There were sightings where UFOs had been tracked by ground radar, airborne radar, ground observation, and combinations of all these elements. I accompanied intelligence officers on investigations. I witnessed the difficulty in breaking down and gaining the confidence of those who were reluctant to talk about their experiences for fear of personal ridicule and embarrassment. Others were cooperative. I observed the technique of thorough interrogation used by Blue Book's analysis and investigative staff. In almost every case, I heard the same words used to describe the sighting. These words were lights and metallic objects. There were reports by reliable, competent observers, including high-ranking Air Force and Navy flyers, civil engineers, and scientists. I learned that the staggering total of over 3,500 reports had been received.
Quite a few of these sightings are unsolved.
Approximately 85% of the sightings are designated as solved.
According to this document, 14.3% of all sightings are officially designated as unknown. The newsmen keep hitting me with the unsolved cases. Anyway, solved is a big word. How do you solve them?
There's nothing hit or miss about it. I'll show you. On December 1st, 1952, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning, several major airports in this area reported a single round object. It was flashing, first white, then white-orange, then amber. It was observed northwest of this central point at an angle of 15 degrees above the horizon. Remember that 15 degrees. It's important. Reports arrived here from Teterboro Airport, Westchester Airport, Newark Airport, LaGuardia Airfield, Idlewild, and Mitchell Field. This flashing sphere of light was also observed by an Eastern Airline pilot who radioed in his report. Various observers at all these airports watched the object through high-power binoculars. When the report arrived here, we checked the weather in that area with Air Force Weather Bureau. That night, at that time, there was no temperature inversion. We got in touch with Navy Balloon Project Center at the University of Minnesota. That gave us an exact schedule of balloons released from that center. We got similar information from every other point where weather balloons are released through Air Force Balloon Plotting Center at Lowry Field, Denver. We contacted Air Force Weather for wind conditions and velocity at the altitude of known balloons. A precise computation of balloons in the air and known wind conditions definitely removed balloons from the picture. We checked with flight service to determine if any aircraft were in the vicinity on the bearing at that time. There were no aircraft.
And still this thing was up there all the time, being observed by various personnel from airfields all over that area?
Correct, and they were seeing it. We checked with our contract astronomer at a leading university in the locality and gave the astronomer the angle of elevation and bearing of the object. Remember, the object was observed at an angle of 15 degrees above the horizon, and I told you that was important. It proved to be the conclusive factor. Our astronomer reported that at the time of the observation, the planet Jupiter was 15 degrees above the horizon, and on the angle of elevation and bearing of the object, there's no doubt about it. What all these people saw was Jupiter.
What made the light flash?
Atmospheric conditions, the same conditions that make the stars appear to twinkle.
You people really go into these things.
We try. In over 80% of the cases, we come up with the correct answers. We don't get the correct answers in all the cases.